Hello there. Excuse the hiatus from this project. I was distracted to another thing and then couldn't figure that out. So I'm running away from that and coming back to this. And the reason I can't show that one, but that it's an assessment from an interview, so I prefer not showing that because that's what the terms of the assessment were. But here we are. We're back at the movie library grid that I was building using Kinter, and specifically trying to follow the MVC design pattern. So what I'm gonna do, because it's been almost, oh my God, when's the last time I posted in here? But it's about 6 days ago. I am completely fogged out. Like I have no idea. No, fogged out. Just yeah, I'm not too sure what's exactly going on with the code, but I'm gonna walk through it and hopefully get myself up to speed with it. So as we recall, just looking at these three, I've also realized that when I do hover over like text, my cursor changes to this little like the typing one, and it's very hard to see from the recording. So I'm gonna try whenever I do hover over things, I'm gonna try like either highlighting or do something with it. But here we are. We have the app file, which is going to be calling all the three different components of the MVC model. And over here we have the MVC. Once again, just for visual, I have the controller set up in between these two files because that's how kind of the data flows back and forth through the controller. So here we are. In the app file over here, we are looking at one class that is receiving, that is a child of TK class. It's essentially Kinter's top level widget, which is like the window itself. And in that you put in like all the different widgets, all the frames, and show the GUI itself. So in here, I recently learned that if we want to extend the parent's functionality, we have to use a super function and then followed by init, which is essentially just creating a like a temporary object of the parent, and then from there we're essentially calling init. Now, just a quick thing, if the parent had another method called, let's say, method A, so it would really just down here be called like super function, like super of dot method A parentheses. Anywho, and as we can see, this is just coming from TK, and this is just essentially like a way of like changing the name on top of the window, which we will see. First, I'm going to go through the entire code, just kind of run through it, and then I'll show you what I was able to produce. Now below that, now we're going to go ahead and create three objects in which we are going to create the model. In the model, we are putting in, and let me go ahead and open up the file as we go about it. So in the model, as we can see that over here in the model file, we can see in the init, in the constructor, we do accept two attributes, title and date. Now, so we take that model class and we go ahead and initialize it to make an object, and we are just passing just stationary just placeholder values. They're not really going to be putting in, like they're not going to show up or anything, but it's just to kind of get the data started. Just the program started. Then we go ahead and go on to view. Views object. You might be wondering why I have view.view. It was throwing me off when I was reviewing the code. I thought that view was like another object of like Python itself, and that's what it was going about. So actually, you know what? This was actually throwing me off because I thought that it's not calling the view object over here from the view object file. It's actually calling like the view of Kinter. So just to clarify that, I just simply only imported the file view.py, and then from that, I'm also calling the object, the class itself. And in here, we are calling, we are sending itself because once this object initializes, like the app object initializes, we want it to essentially pass, we want it to be limited to that object itself and do everything within that object. I'm not exactly fully clear, so as I go about it, I will explain. I as I go over time, as I go through time, I'll be able to more explain it more better. I'm also dealing with that 6-day fog, so I don't, so all I can remember is that like because we are initializing app as an object, so then, and we want to do everything within that one object, we're going to pass self. Yeah. Um, now, that's actually a great point of, I'm not sure why we are, yeah, I actually cannot recall why. But anyway, we are then going to go ahead and essentially using the geometry manager. This is that's one of the three geometry managers from Kinter, and we're gonna use a grid instead of pack. We're gonna use grid to be able to show it exactly where we want it. Then we'll dive, yeah, and then the third control, and then the third object is the controller, and in here we are sending it, as we can see from the controller's object from the controller file. We can see that it accepts two attributes, which are model and view. So we're going to go ahead and pass these two that we just recently created, model UI model and UI view. And then this is still very interesting to me, how first we initialize all the models, initialize all the objects, and then we go back into views, into views method called self-controller, and then we pass that controller. That's a very interesting thing for me. It still stands out, but we're going to carry on. And of course, we are then going to go ahead and run the file. We're going to go and run this app.py file, in which case we're going to declare app to be the app object. And then we're going to go ahead and just to run the whole, run the entire thing on Kinter, we're going to go ahead and pass in main loop. Do excuse the vague descriptions. I don't know it fully yet, so just bear with me on that. So here we are, just looking at it from, let's start off with the view, because that's where the data is going to go about. Let me quickly just check the time as well, so we make sure we have enough time. Oh yeah, we have plenty of time. So we have about 7 more minutes. So in view, we are essentially going to be making the GUI, right? And in that we're using Kinter to put up a label for the top header, then the two entries for entry name and for the date, and as well as their labels, and as well as a button over here, which has a command for self submit. And then lastly, we have controller, which is another add attribute, which is set initially to none. And we can also see that in the view object, we are actually going to be inheriting from the frame class, which is the parent class, and we're going to be extending its functionality by calling its attribute, by calling the parent's attribute parent's attribute parent. Yeah. And like really, it could just be any other name, I'm assuming. I don't think it needs to be that one thing. But yeah. Yeah, so we are gonna describe it where we want it to be using the geometry manager. And then within this we have three different methods, in which the first one is setting the controller. So the way I see this is that we're not always going to need to call the controller, right? We can sometimes just simply excuse that. We can simply just run the view without having to pass anything for the controller. So initially, so the way I understand it is that initially we don't need to set any value. We just need to show the GUI, right? And then upon having initialized model and the controller objects, that's when we can decide that, hey, let's go ahead and change the value for the controller attribute in view file, and then we can and so that's why it's able to pass all the information and then receive it, etc. So that's the way I understand it. And then after that, we have the user and we have the receiving functionalities. So for the submit method, so this method is actually being called within the submit button, as we had reviewed before, as we've seen before, and in it, it's essentially just saying that, and I just set up a quick conditional in which if the entry line, if the name if there's no name for the movie provided, then let's go ahead and get um, the date. Then let's go ahead and save. Yeah, let's go ahead and get the dates entry because likely that's what will be entered and vice versa within the date. Now this save function, I'm also going to go ahead and move on to the controller, and then we'll come back for the receiving functionality. What's happening is that we're going to check for either the entries to be empty, and whichever one it is, we're going to be like, okay, that one's empty, but let's take the second one and keep on working with it. What this is doing is it is now calling the method within the controller object, which we can see here, and it's able to save. Then because it is also receiving its two attributes for its instances. For that method, the method is going to be receiving two additional attributes in addition to what it's already constructed with. And in it, we are going to be receiving date and title. And that's why whichever one is empty, we're going to pass it none instead of a null value because it would raise an error. So we are going to do that. Yeah, so we're going to be passing it none. So if we do receive none, then we are going to go ahead and set the movie result date to be the date to be the date from there. Just want to quickly just see what is going on in here. Yeah, so we take the date search from the model. Oh yeah, right. So once we have received it and really from the view file, it's really just passing on the value, right? From the view. That's all that's the best part about it. That in the view component of the MVC pattern, it's only supposed to direct any additional data that's received that's in the view, no other functionality. So once we do send it, I do apologize if there's any background noise. My cat's going wild. Anyhow, so yeah, we receive these two depending on whichever one's empty. Then we are going to describe it. We're going to set the models method, the model objects method date search, which we can now go into, and we're going to go ahead and I wonder what is happening in here. So we are self.model.date search. And we are oh right, because we now can we had changed it from the previous iteration in which first the model was just receiving the data and that's it, but now we're actually going to be sending it back to the view. So in that case, upon save, it's going to send the date to the date search. It's going to do its thing, which is over here. It's going to go ahead and execute the query, receive it back, and then it's going to return the self.movies. And in this, we are going to receive self.view, self.view.receiving. We're going to be passing it to the whatever result that we get, and this result is actually coming in from the self.movies. So that just that list of tuples, however the SQL query returns it, we're going to go ahead and send it back to viewing, right? Then in the viewing, then we can see that, in the receiving, we can see that the movie is received as a pattern, as a methods attribute. And initially the result is just an empty string. Then what we are going to do is we're going to go, we have initialized the result to be empty and the image to be none. Now like I said, that it was the result from this query is likely going to be a list of tuples. So we're going to go ahead and iterate through that list, and depending on everything we find,